I have never, ever heard of this. So I'm walking around my entire house recording all the things.
With home insurance, it's a requirement when you have a mortgage, right?
Yeah.
But something that oftentimes gets overlooked is the additional coverages that one can purchase, right? Something that we would recommend is that you take a camera or even just your cell phone and go around your house and record basically anything and everything, right? So it's very important we do that in case something happens and we need to file a claim. You'll be ready.
So, Talia, you have, how many years have you worked here now?
6 years.
Oh my gosh.
6 years.
Where were you before Mountain America?
Time flies. I was at a title loan company. Yeah, very different cultures, environments, 100%.
Yeah. So you've been, though, in the financial industry for a long time.
Yes, absolutely.
So when we're talking about our topic today of maybe some of the areas that we're forgetting about with finances, right? Yeah. I mean, I think about it. I've worked here now for well over a decade. I understand how to budget. I have savings. Yes, I'm investing, saving for retirement, those things. But like, what are some of those other areas that we might be forgetting about? We have listed here risk reduction.
Yes.
Talk to me about risk and how we can better reduce it when it comes to our financial plan.
Yes, of course. This is all about insurance. Different types of insurances, right? What is insurance? It reduces the greater losses that we have or that we have to take, right? The first one we have is with life and disability insurance, right? Oftentimes, people have this through their employer, which is awesome, which is great. It's a good idea. However, something that we may be forgetting is, should we choose to part ways with the organization, we can't necessarily take that life insurance policy or disability policy with us, right? And that is definitely a huge risk. Why? Because often a lot of people say, well, I could just get another job and if I get another employer, I can just purchase the policy again. And yes, you may be able to do that, but there's a lot of other things to consider, right? What if you have to take a health assessment now, right? And they determine that you're not eligible to get that health insurance that disability or that life insurance, right? Or if, let's say you have an illness or a disease that prevents you from getting a new life or disability insurance, then you're at a loss there, right?
Okay. So what are our options if the disability is not going to, and life insurance through our employer is not a good idea long term, right?
Yes.
What should we do?
We would recommend that you purchase the life and disability insurance the sooner the better through a third party.
Okay.
Not necessarily through your employer for that exact reason. If you part ways with the employer, you're not necessarily taking this insurance with you.
Okay. So life insurance. So I've heard one thing about life insurance, right? It's like, oh yes, I want whole life always, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to be covered for my whole life. Let's just pay a ton of money and get that for me and all my kids and all the things. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this. I had I was meeting with a friend who just so happens to sell insurance. And he said, Kristalina, it doesn't necessarily make sense in your situation right now to get whole life. He's like, get term life. Make sure at that point you're maxing out your 401k, you're maxing out your HSA, you're maxing out, all the other things, then think about whole life. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that? Is that the right type of thing we should be talking about, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think everybody's situation is definitely different, right? Yeah. It depends. It's definitely different if you're single, right? And no dependents.
Right.
Definitely different if you're head of household and you have children that do depend on you, of course, right? So I would say everybody's situation is different, but the recommendation your friend made is not a bad one.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so along with this insurance, right, what do we need? Is this where we're listing out all of the things that we want to have covered in it, or what does this look like?
Yes, absolutely. One thing with life insurance, it's important that you make sure you have enough coverage, right?
Right.
It's important that if you have a mortgage, right, an outstanding mortgage, that it's enough to cover that mortgage, right, to pay off that loan. Make sure that it's enough to pay off an auto loan if you have an auto loan or two, right? We want to make sure that all of our assets are paid off, right, when something happens to us. So then it could be given to our beneficiaries. So that's an important thing to make sure is that you have enough coverage. The other thing that I would recommend is also getting coverages for your dependents. And I know we're going to get to student loans a little bit further down, so I'll save that for student loans.
Okay, fair enough. One question I do have though, because I feel like this is something that is often overlooked, is if I am married, right, and let's say I'm the breadwinner, but my partner, who is not, maybe they're the stay-at-home spouse, they still need life insurance too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Just because they're not bringing in an actual income, they're still
absolutely
worth a lot, right? When you think of paying for a full-time care for your other dependents or whatever that looks like. So it's something to think about too, right?
100%. Yes, you're right on. Even if it's a stay-at-home parent, whether that's the mom or the dad, definitely. Like you said, they're pretty significant other, right?
Yes.
You're with them for a reason. So yes, especially if they're at stay-at-home parent, because there's some statistics that show that stay-at-home parents should be earning triple, as much as the income person, the person that's bringing in the income. So absolutely, right on.
Awesome. Talking about risk reduction, we've talked about life insurance, whole life, term life, that. What about home insurance?
Yes, absolutely. With home insurance, it's a requirement when you have a mortgage, right?
Yeah.
But something that oftentimes gets overlooked is the additional coverages that one can purchase, right? For example, sewer backup, right? Huge, important, right? If you're not covered, that's a lot of change that you're going to have to use to repair anything that's, damaged upon a sewer, line breaking. Another thing is something that we would recommend is like, let's say, for example, after Christmas, right? You've either purchased or been gifted some really nice gifts, right? And what we would recommend is that you take a camera or even just your cell phone, right? And go around your house and record basically anything and everything, right? That you wish to either include in your homeowner's policy for full replacement coverage or replacement value coverage. Make sure that when you're recording, let's say big ticket items, right, you capture identifying information such as the serial number, the make, model, year, right? Let's say of your dishwasher, your new dishwasher or your new washer and dryer, right? So it's very important we do that in case something happens and we need to file a claim. You'll be ready.
Okay, interesting. I have never, ever heard of this.
Yes.
So I'm walking around my entire house after Christmas, recording all the things.
Yes, all the big ticket items that you wish to include in your insurance for either full coverage or replacement value.
Okay. Would photos of these items work as well, or is video preferred?
I think video is preferred.
Okay.
Just because they're going to be able, right, if you need to submit a claim, they're going to be able to see, okay, it's not a standstill, right? It's not a picture. It's you going around the whole house. They're going to be able to see, the other things that are in your house as well. So I think a video is preferred.
Okay. Awesome. Anything else when it comes to risk reduction that we need to touch on?
Yes. One more thing.
Okay.
Umbrella insurance. This will extend the coverages that you have on your auto, right? On your auto coverage, your homeowner's policy, even your business, right? This is extra protection to reduce your losses, right? To reduce the things that you may have to pay out of pocket. So umbrella insurance is highly recommended.
Okay. So insurance and reducing that risk is a big piece that a lot of us, I'm definitely not taking video of my house, so I need to make sure and do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's talk about, speaking of homes and things that we maybe can leave behind, estate planning.
Yes.
This is one that kind of hits close to home for me. I've had several grandparents pass away recently, as well as my parents are aging. Dang it, right?
Yes.
All of us are aging, but as your parents get even older, it's something that comes to mind. So what are your thoughts? What are we missing out with estate planning or forgetting?
Yes, it's very important. A few things. Will. We want to make sure we draft that will. It could be as easy as accessing it online and just creating your own. You do get what you pay for, so be very careful with that. So it's oftentimes recommended that you visit an attorney or a lawyer to help you draft your will, right?
Okay.
This will have, let me back up, as well as a trust, right? These two documents are legal documents. They can be used in court, right? And they will basically tell the court, okay, if I pass away, this is how I want my assets, my property to be managed, right? You can list a trustee, you can list an executor, and this will help the court determine where everything needs to go, right? It does help the whole process, because if you don't have this, your family is going to be in court for a long time, right? Until they establish how everything is going to be taken care of. So definitely highly recommend to visit a lawyer or attorney. But again, you can have this access through online.
Okay. What are your tips when it comes to estate planning, aside from obviously using a professional?
Yes. Something that I would recommend is, if you do already have one, make sure that you're revisiting it every 3 to 5 years, just with any new changes, right? Divorce, marriage, a new child, right? You want to make sure that you are including it, or that you're updating your trust and your will as you see fit. So making sure that you are revisiting, because oftentimes we'll draft it and it's a set it and forget it type of thing, when we need to make sure we're revisiting and making sure that the ideas that we had, right, 5 years ago are still the ideas we have now.
Okay. Love that. When it comes to estate planning as well, talk to me about power of attorney, medical directives. What do those look like?
Those are huge. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't have a medical directive till just recently. And it's huge. A medical directive is going to list what you want to happen in case something happens to you and you're not able to make your own decisions, right? It gives access to X person to make decisions on your behalf, right? A DNR, a do not resuscitate, would go on there, right? If your heart stops beating, do you wish to be resuscitated? Do you wish the hospital takes extreme measures to keep you alive, right? It's important to list that there, because it then helps your family, your family decide, okay, this is who's making the decisions, versus a battle between mom and wife, right? Or spouses or things like that. So important to have a medical directive, especially because we never know what can happen.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's why we want to reduce the risk and plan, right?
Yes.
So love it. As far as estate planning goes, we touched a little bit on power of attorney, but tell me why that's so important.
Yes, it's not the same thing as a medical directive, but I like to think about it as, okay, if something happens to me where I'm not necessarily in the hospital, right? But I can't make those decisions on just maybe everyday life, right? On my own, who do I trust enough to make these decisions for me, right? Power of attorney, there's different powers of attorneys. It could be listed for your finances, right? Who do you want to take care of your finances? Let's say you're getting older, you're aging, right? And you're forgetting stuff, right? Yeah. You're forgetting how much you owe on this or that. Or let's say you don't have any debt, but you have a lot of money in the bank, right? So you want to make sure that money is well taken care of, and the decisions that are being made are in your best interest. So it's important to have that power of attorney to make decisions on everyday life, on your finances, on how you wish to be taken care for, right? Your health. Yeah. Very important to have that power of attorney to assign someone you really trust.
Okay. Love it. So anything else on estate planning?
I think we got it covered.
Okay, awesome. So this next one is so interesting to me, because it is something that I feel like affects our everyday life now when it comes to password managers. Why is this something that all of us are not thinking of?
Yes. First and foremost, you don't want to be like me. This is definitely a huge one, because before, let's say maybe 5 months ago, I would write my passwords on a little sticky and just stick them in a notebook, right? And oftentimes my passwords were all the same. So if you hacked into one of my secured, bank accounts or anything like that, you basically got everything from me because my password was the same. But no, do not do that. We want to make sure that if you have passwords that you're using online, right, that you have some sort of like password vault. So for example, LastPass is a good one. There's other different ones that you can use, right? But you want to make sure any site that you're visiting has at least two-factor authenticator, which means it's going to ask you 2 forms to identify yourself, right? It makes it harder for a fraudster to gain access to your financials or to, just basically any other thing, right? Nowadays, I feel like a lot can be done online. You don't necessarily have to go to the store to do stuff anymore. So it's important that you have at least two-factor authenticator and that your passwords are different. You don't want to have the same password for all of your things. You want to have different passwords, and you do want to make it complicated a little bit, right? Not to the point where you can't necessarily remember, right? But again, this is why the password vault is helpful. But to the point where it makes it a little bit harder for these fraudsters to get into your personal information. So absolutely a huge one that we often tend to just oversee.
Yeah. Well, and even tying that back to estate planning, right? Heaven forbid something happens to me and now my husband's like, I don't know where all these passwords are.
Exactly.
Right? But if we both have access to that vault, that could be a good thing.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. With those vaults, as a person setting up the account, you can give access to, let's say, your spouse, right? You can give emergency access to people that you trust. For example, if I give my significant other access, right? If something happens to me, I set him up as a person to be able to access my accounts and my passwords after X amount of time, whether that be 24 hours, 72 hours, right? If he requests access and I don't either approve or deny, then it's automatically granted to him, right?
Okay.
Because oftentimes, if I'm not checking it, means I'm in trouble, something happened to me, right?
Right.
So it grants them this access, so they're able to access your bank statements, your bank accounts, anything that they need to access should something happen to you.
Okay, interesting. So really something that we all need to be thinking about.
Yes.
Okay, love it. Tell me about savings rates.
Yes, this one is a huge one. Actually, I've been saying that with everything, but I think all of this is really important.
Yeah.
But savings rate, what we mean by that is, let's say, for example, you're making $3,000 a month. Awesome. And you're saving, let's say you're saving $500 a month. That's awesome too, right? You're saving. However, when we get a bonus or we get a pay increase, right? Instead of having this extra money go to, let's say, fun money, right? We need to be also thinking about increasing that savings rate as we get an increase. What does that look like? That looks like, well, if now I'm making $3,500 a month, well, I'm going to up my savings rate to, let's say, $600 or $650 a month. That way, as your income is increasing, so is your savings rate, right? Yeah. That ties in with inflation, right? The $500 that you were saving 3 years down the road is not going to be worth $500, right?
Right.
So as things are increasing, as the market, everything, right, is increasing, well, so are your savings rate.
Okay. Love that. And just so important, right? I think, and this kind of leads into our next point too, of lifestyle inflation, right? Because if we're able to just rein it in, right?
Yeah.
And we're not having all of the luxuries of yesterday become the necessities of today.
Absolutely.
I think that would really help, you know, and making sure we're saving